100,000 subscribers. Literally how? Thank you guys for 100,000 subscribers. What an insane milestone. If you guys don't know this, some of you new people, or even if you have been here from day one and you still don't know this, I don't do this full time. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not a full-time influencer. I'm not a content creator. I mean, I guess I am, like, in a way, but it's not like my identity. I still work a full-time job, and this is just something I do for fun. So for it to be this successful and have that big box checked as far as a YouTube channel, I don't understand. But all I have to do is thank you guys for all that success. So here we are, and I'm going to keep doing what I've always been doing, making videos on my phone, keeping stuff super honest, chill, low-key, and we'll keep rolling with it. So maybe we'll get another 100. I don't know. Hopefully I'll get a plaque from YouTube and we'll put it somewhere in the garage. But anyway, thank you guys again for that. I want to spend quite a bit of time talking about different truck setups. It doesn't matter if it's a Tacoma, whatever. I've essentially built 3 different trucks on one truck. Maybe 4 if you count some things, but I've lived so many different setups. I've ran so many different brands. I've installed so many different brands. I've really been different, I guess, as far as like regular people on YouTube when they get a product and they're like, this is the best thing ever, and they only have that one product to base the best thing ever claim on. I hate that. That doesn't make sense to me. So I feel like I'm kind of unique bringing you guys this video because I've had all those reps in different setups and what works, what doesn't. If you're not familiar with Sandy Cats, he's one of my favorite on YouTube because he's pretty similar to me, even more so, because on his 4Runner, dude, he's gone through like 4 different suspensions and a ton of different bumpers and cook systems and blah, 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 this and that. And he's able to sit back and tell his viewers, hey, this is the best, this is the best, this is the best. So I really like that approach. And, you know, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I've had this truck for 3.5, almost kind of 4 years. And basically each year it's been a completely different build, you know, from suspension to wheels to tires to the way the camping setup is. Totally different. So I'm able to explain all those in detail to you guys and have a completely unbiased opinion. I'm going to show you a bunch of photos of the different stages of the truck. Just sit back and we're going to talk all about trucks. And if you're brand new to building a truck, this is going to be helpful. If you already have a truck build and you're, you know, in the process of building it and you're aspiring to be truck build X or whatever, this is still going to help you. Again, one person have gone through all those different stages. So let's talk about them all. So when you think about it, there's really only 3 ways to build an Overland truck. And I've lived all 3 of these. I'm going to tell you the pros and cons of each and what I've learned from each setup. And we're not talking about any brands here. Brands do not matter. We're talking about styles of setup. So the first is going to be a traditional bed rack or camper shell and a rooftop tent. Okay, that's the first one. The second one is going to be a camper. So a GFC and Alucab, again, brand doesn't matter. It's that kind of thing where there's an integrated rooftop tent on the top. It pops up, you can stand in it, and you can kind of live in it. So it's a camper. Option 3 is what I have currently, and that is a flatbed tray and canopy. You know, this is a full bed replacement. You have a flatbed as your base. You have a box on top, which you can take on and off, and then a tent goes on top of that. Okay, so there's 3 ways. When you talk about an SUV, like a 4Runner, Land Cruiser, whatever, it doesn't matter. You don't have a bed, so you don't have honestly any options. You have really one option for an Overland style build. Sure, you can change up axles and bumpers and wheels and tires and stuff, but that doesn't really matter. It's not really what I'm getting at. And yes, I have had multiple different suspensions. I've had 4 different upper control arms and 5 different rooftop tents and 2 sets of different bumpers and skid plates. And I've had 4 different style and brand wheels, 4 different size tires, 4 different brands of tires. Like, I've ran through the gamut of that stuff. We're not talking about that. We're talking more overland truck kind of camping setups. All right, pros and cons of option 1. Pros, it's the cheapest out of all the options. It is the most readily available as far as parts. It's probably the easiest to install. It doesn't take hardly any effort to put some of this stuff on. It's pretty dang modular now. I mean, you can bolt a lot of stuff to these bed racks. You know, these camper shells are pretty cool too. Another pro, you can transfer these to different trucks. So if you want to get rid of it or whatever, you can sell it. That's, you know, pretty easy. That's what I did from my stage 1 to stage 2 or whatever. And I guess that's another thing. You're not really committed at that point because everything's kind of a bolt-on. The other 2 options are more of a commitment. So some of the cons of option 1 for your truck setup, at least for me, and a lot of people just do fine with this, but for me, my stuff was never organized and I couldn't get to it quickly. It was annoying. You know, I found myself, I had like a cool, you know, shower or whatever, but it was buried in a box in the back of the truck, and it was just annoying to get to. Nothing was easy to access. And the other thing is, a lot of the times when you have a bed rack, there's no side access. You know, a camper shell, some of them have side access, some of them actually don't. But you can't reach anything from the side, so that limits one point of entry for your stuff. So you have to drop the tailgate, you know, reach over and, you know, crawl in the back basically and grab your stuff. For me, from all the times I went out and everything, that's just so annoying, and I hated that. And then that, you know, enters a drawer system, and then that's when you can pull your gear out more towards you. But again, you're limiting yourself to only accessing your stuff from one entry. So that's a con. Another con, especially if you have a bed rack, is all your stuff in the back of your truck is completely exposed, whether that's to somebody that can steal your stuff or exposed to the elements. I've been with so many people that have bed racks. You know, in the Ozarks, it's so muddy here. Dude, your stuff gets caked in mud, and then the whole rest of the camping trip, you have to touch that, you know, super dirty, muddy box to get to your stove or whatever. And then you have this like mud trail, and that's just not fun. Then you use all your water to wash your mud, and it's just, that doesn't make sense to me. That's another con, but you can upgrade that just a little bit by having a camper shell, which kind of seals out some of that dirt and dust and stuff. To me, those are the pros and cons that stuck out the most to me in that setup. Again, it's really simple. Most people start out this way. Nothing wrong with this setup. Again, I know guys that run this setup and they love it, and they do fine. Cool. Not for me. All right, moving on to option 2 is going to be truck campers. So in my case, I had a GFC. This was the biggest jump from step 1 to 2 is a really big jump. If you're going into a camper, it's game changing in so many ways. So pros for option 2, your gear accessibility is way better. So you have 3 sides to access your stuff in your truck bed instead of 1. I can remember countless times when I got my setup, just remembering how awesome it was just to pull off on the side of the trail, you know, open the side door, grab something in 2 seconds, and then just hop back in and keep trucking. Like, that's awesome. I didn't have to take out my rear swing out and move the doors and drop the tailgate and do all this crap just to get something. It was awesome. That changes the game like you wouldn't believe. The other thing, and probably the biggest advantage of a camper, is just that really. It's a camper. So you can stand in this thing. You are part of the truck bed at this point. You can hunker down in weather. You can heat the whole thing. You're not going inside and outside. You know, if you need to go pee in the middle of the night, or even take a dump in the middle of the night, man, you can, where you're sleeping, your mattress, you can just crawl down and still stay warm and go to the bathroom or whatever in the bottom of the truck bed. Easy. You don't have to get out and climb down that ladder, hurt your feet, all that crap. You're nice and secure in there. So that was awesome. And the biggest thing too was you could stand up and change. I loved that. And I really took that for granted because I don't have that on my current setup. But you can stand up. You know, there was, I don't know, 2 feet above my head where there was still room. So you can actually have like a couple people in there and hang out, which is pretty sweet. Those were the 2 biggest things for me. Is the whole living situation was way different as far as standing and moving around and like hunkering down. That was a huge pro. And the other pro was your gear accessibility has increased like crazy, being able to grab stuff from the sides. The cons of this setup is it's a lot more expensive. I mean, it's probably 3 times more expensive as option 1 to build a truck. And it's also, I don't want to say it's permanent because I took mine off. It's not permanent, but it's more of a permanent setup than option 1. Because to really maximize the camper option, what you want to do is seal it off really good against dust, because dust in truck beds comes from everywhere, and rain, it's just, they're not really meant to be sealed, especially around the tailgate. So you have to go to great lengths to really seal that off very well. And something like an Alucab, that's pretty much a permanent thing because they actually make like sealing kits for those to kind of bond to the truck. Anyway, that's kind of a con in a way, but you can sell it. Like I said, it's just a little bit more difficult. And yeah, the cost is 3 times more. Another con, although it's kind of a slight con, is you can't change your quote unquote rooftop tent. So you can't change, you know, let's say you wanted one that folds out a different way, or you wanted a complete pop-up or whatever. You have to pick your camper based off of one style of tent, whether that's a wedge camper, whether that's like a 4-wheel camper where they pop up like this. You can't really change the top portion of your camper is what I'm trying to say. So keep that in mind. Like you basically need to come into option 2 really knowing what kind of sleeping situation you like. In option 1, I had one tent that went straight up, and I was like, okay, that's cool, whatever. And then I went to a wedge style, which only one side goes up, and I couldn't believe the amount of space I lost out of a wedge style rooftop tent. So, you know, I still went with the GFC, blah, 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 all that. But just keep in consideration, you can't change the top of a camper setup. So the last con with option 2 for me was the truck was basically a dedicated overland truck at that point. I mean, obviously it is, and that's its intention, but I couldn't really go to the hardware store and put wood in there and like use it as a truck, because that thing was so dialed in just for that truck bed to live in, for a person to be comfortable in the back, not, you know, hauling wood and stuff. So I couldn't really take that off and use my truck like a truck. So you really have to keep that in mind. You're pretty dang dedicated at that point if you go option 2. All right, option 3, the flatbed tray and canopy. All right, the pros that I've found so far: you get an insane amount of storage. You can physically take more things, you know, from the factory. There's no storage in your truck bed whatsoever. It's just a shell that holds things in the actual truck bed. The bed itself, like the base, doesn't have anything. When you put a flatbed on there, you get all these drawers in the truck. Everything has a home, it's ready to go. And then additionally, you get this box that goes on top for more storage. Okay, so the amount of things you can carry is one pro. The second pro is all that stuff you can carry is the most easy to access. It's the most efficient. It's the most, there's no barrier to be able to use your stuff. You open a door and it's right there. There's no reaching around or like, you know, hey, let me pull this bin out to get to this bin to whatever. It doesn't matter. Everything's at your fingertips. It's amazing. The third pro, I think we're on the third pro of a flatbed tray and canopy, is there's no need for a bumper. So a rear bumper, it's part of the flatbed. So you get an insane amount of departure angle. You know, your receiver hitch, all that stuff is incorporated. Whereas, you know, if you have a truck bed camper, you still need to buy a bumper if you want that high clearance. You still have to do that. So that's an additional thing. This with the flatbed, it just comes with it. It's awesome. Another pro to option 3 is, let's say you dent a fender, or you dent or break or whatever, one of those boxes on the flatbed. Since everything's pieced together, you can just buy a new whatever piece you messed up and bolt it right on. You know, let's say like, you know, on option 1 or 2, you don't have a bumper or whatever, or you smoke your rear quarter panel or your bed in a tree, well, you got to get a whole new bed or you got to fix that dent, and that's super expensive. So the flatbed is super tough, but when it does break, or if it does break, you can just bolt that thing on and it's really, there's no dramas. The next pro for a flatbed tray and canopy setup, option 3 for your truck setups is, hey, look at that, it's right there, is going to be versatility. This thing is a Lego. Seriously, it's cool because you think you buy, you know, one system or whatever for your truck, but it's like a million different things. So what I mean by that is you can take the box off and it's actually really simple. It's just a couple bolts and you put it on some jack stands and you drive out from under it. Then essentially you seriously have a different truck. So when you have a flatbed tray and canopy, you can have 2 different vehicles in a sense. So that opens up all these possibilities of, hey, now you can use your truck like a truck if you want to. You can go to the hardware store and get all that wood like I mentioned, where option 2 you couldn't. So what I actually plan to do in the summer for my truck is take that box off. And so that's going to remove the fridge, that's going to remove the kitchen, that's going to remove the awning, the rooftop tent, all that weight. And it's going to give me a lot lighter of a truck, and I'll be able to wheel a lot harder trails because I won't have that top heaviness. I just won't have all that excess. You know, this is currently, like as it sits, I keep pointing to this picture because it's here, but this is a dedicated, well, that's the thing, I guess. It's not a dedicated camping rig, but at this moment it is because it has everything. That's the cool thing. You can take that box off and then it becomes like a hardcore wheeler truck. Or, like I said earlier, you can go to the hardware store and load it up with a bunch of crap or whatever. That's awesome. You don't get that with the other setups. You can't just bolt off your Alucab and go run to the store. It doesn't work like that. You can't just bolt off your bed rack or your camper shell, right? Like, that's awesome. That is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, pros, is to be able to take that thing off. All right, let's talk cons on option 3, the flatbed tray and canopy setup. The first con is going to be cost. It's very expensive. It's the most expensive by far out of all the options. But if you're a hardcore adventurer, you're really into overlanding, you know, this is something that's going to make your life really, really easy. I'm living proof to that. Please believe me, I'm not trying to be biased. I'm just trying to tell you, dude, when I go to camp with this thing, it's done. It's boom, 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 done. It's awesome. But that's a con. It's very expensive. The next con to this setup is, this is by far the worst thing for me personally, and that is not being able to have that truck camper sort of experience. You know, I can't climb into this thing and hunker down. Now I have to use a ladder again and I have to deploy it and blah, blah, blah. It's just one tiny little extra step, but after coming from option 2, I miss it, to be honest. Like, I feel like I'm back to just a rooftop tent, which I kind of am. But again, I get all these crazy cool modularity and storage features, but it's a give and take. Everything's a give and take. But yeah, I miss being able to get inside the truck bed and just kind of chill out. So yeah, that's the second con. The third con, it wheels differently with this setup. And what I mean by that is I didn't used to lift a bunch of wheels when I had option 1 or option 2. That's a whole other thing I should talk about, is how do these different setups wheel. It is a little bit heavier. Overall, I gained about 400 pounds over the last setup, but I do feel this wheeling. I feel it differently. I have yet to hit the back of this thing for departure angle, so that's one thing. That's insane. That's a pro. That's awesome. But I feel this thing lifting wheels all the time. Like if I'm going up something and it's off camber or rutted out or whatever, I feel this thing lift. I mean, you guys have probably seen that Ozark video I just put out like a month ago. I almost tipped this thing because that was the first kind of gnarly obstacle I went on, and dude, it just lifted up with no effort at all. Kind of wild. So that's also what's cool, is I can take that box off and I can make it a lot lighter, and I can actually do what I have been doing, you know, wheeling really, really hard stuff with no issues. I won't lift that wheel because I won't have that weight. But with the box on there, I have that weight, so it wheels differently. It's just something different to consider. This is more camping, everything at your fingertips, and if you take it off, it's more of a wheeler. So let me take just a second and tell you about option 1 and 2, the way that was wheeled for me. Option 1 was the lightest, so it really wasn't that much different than a stock truck, to be honest. So option 2, the camper setup for wheeling, honestly was really good. I never ever came close to flopping like I did with the flatbed. But I guess the weight was just a little bit differently distributed and stuff. And you know, I have a rear bumper, or I had the rear bumper on the camper setup on option 2, which limited my departure angle compared to option 3. So maybe I couldn't tilt back as much. I don't know. But for me, it just wheeled differently. It felt differently turning. It felt overall a little bit lighter because it actually was. I could feel that additional 400 pounds on the flatbed. So option 3, yeah, like I said, it lifts wheels more. So if I want to not do that, I'll just take the box off and then I can do harder trails. So that is what it is. So those are all the pros and cons for the 3 different styles of truck builds, from my personal opinion, having lived all 3. So if you were to ask me what my favorite setup is, personally and truthfully, it would be option 4, which it doesn't exist, at least to my knowledge. And that would be a pass-through, so some sort of camper situation with a flatbed tray and canopy. So if I could somehow combine like the elements of a GFC into the box onto a flatbed, that's freaking gangster. That'd be perfect, because then I can get that, I can stand up in it, I can hunker down in it, you know, I can whatever. So that's the ultimate thing in my personal opinion. But every single setup has pros and cons. I'm sure that would introduce a whole new set of pros and cons. So like, it's, you know, when you're building a truck, if you're building it for the first time, you're brand new, whatever, just know that there's going to be pros and cons every day of the week. It doesn't matter how you build it. Just try to, you know, I'm hoping this video helps you stack as many pros as you can into your truck build to where you can have it the way you like it the first time, because I know I've spent a lot of money on this freaking truck because I've built it 4 times, 3 times, whatever. So I hope this is informative to you guys. Hope you learned something. Again, I just wanted to get on here because I think I'm kind of unique in the fact that I've lived all these. So I'm also sure, I'm positive that I forgot some points here or there. And if I remember anything substantial, I'll put it in the comments. But please comment below. I really want to hear your feedback on this video. And, you know, if you've had different experiences, I want people to see those in the comments as well. But again, this is just my personal opinion, having all these different setups. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks again for 100,000 subscribers. Insane, crazy, awesome. That's all I have to say. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.